Greetings, Pastor Ken Buttermore, Standing Stone Bible Church, to talk to you about some of the guiding principles of Colossae Collaborative School, a homeschool collaborative that we do here, working with homeschoolers, bringing them together and doing group sessions a couple days a week, kind of that university style of school. I want to just share with you 11 values or principles or guiding philosophies that direct us. Number one is, it exists, the Colossae Collaborative School exists to help homes train their children in the ways of God and press both home and student to greater faith, service, and love. CCS is both a support and a guide for parents who want their child to be daily enmeshed in the truths of God's Word. Daily, and you could even go to hourly. We want God in the middle of all this talked about and promoted. Number two, CCS's educational priorities are: first, God, His wisdom and His pleasure, and this should be true for all of us, shouldn't it? Number two, followed by character. Character is number two. Then the core disciplines. You think about math and science and language arts and sociology, those kind of things. And then number four, other subjects like music, foreign language, shop, home ec, art. And lastly, sports, clubs, field trips, those kinds of things. So it's God, character. We believe that character will carry a person a lot further than even understanding 2 plus 2 is 4. We want people who exude and look like Jesus and act like Jesus. God, character, core disciplines, auxiliary disciplines, and then sports. Number three, for curriculum, CCS has opted to primarily use Bob Jones, which has a long track record and gives the teacher some latitude, some freedom, some options to insert their own teachings or auxiliary materials. Some curriculums are so loaded, there's almost no wiggle room, there's almost no extra room for deviating or looking into something special, bringing something special to bear, because the curriculum is so loaded and laden. So Bob Jones gives some freedom in that. Bob Jones is appealing also because of his strong stance concerning creation and God's rule. Number four, CCS is under the eldership of a local church, Standing Stone Bible Church of Gretna, Nebraska, and thus it's under its statement of faith and constitution. You can go to the Standing Stone website and see its statement of faith and its constitution and understand those guiding documents, what the school is operating under. The school is not a parent-ran school. It's not ran by its own board. Parents, while so important, too often see things through colored glasses. We believe that there's great value in having kind of outsiders or those who are not directly engaged in the school having oversight. However, parents will be well informed and given a strong voice in those decisions not dictated by church or school. Policy. Number five, to keep costs down, CCS looks for monetary support from extended family, friends, and the older generation. There will not be fundraisers. Number six, we believe it's important to have a male at the point of the school. In fact, it's much preferred that a number of men be active in the school. We want our young boys to see men leading. Number seven, of great importance is a literal take of the opening chapters of Genesis and the closing chapters of Revelation, which serve to account for the middle chapters and accent the middle chapters of the Bible, the death of Jesus. Genesis is about God creating in 6 days, and I'd say recently. The rebellion of man, which led to death and leads to death. The judgment of God in a worldwide flood. The making of nations at Babel. And the formation of the Jews for God's service, Genesis 12. The last chapters tell of God's wrath on mankind. The return of Jesus to deal with evil. Then His rule on earth for 1,000 years, followed by a judging and purging of the earth. And lastly, a new perfect earth on which will dwell God and Jesus with all those who embrace His truth before dying. Character development. Number 8. Character development is a constant project which comes from studying God's Word and its peoples. David or Joseph or Samuel. And seeing God's truths lived out in the lives of people in past days. We think about Jim Elliot, or we think about Hudson Taylor or George Mueller. Seeing those lived out. So we look at character, we develop character, we want character developed in our kids. Number 9, being born again is critical. That is, a Christian by God's standard. Well, you can be a Christian by the church standard, being a Christian by your parents or grandma's standard. You can be a Christian by your standard. Those won't get you in. You got to be a Christian by God's standard. So a true Christian is marked by a faith in God and his ways. We think about Calvary, we think about Jesus and submission to him. That is marked by a personal relationship with him. You become his, you're adopted by him. He becomes your father, he becomes your head, he becomes your love. Such a life begins with agreeing with God about personal sin and deserved punishment. It is also believing that Jesus is God, who died to pay the person's debt owed to God, the sin debt. And with those beliefs embraced, salvation comes to those who are repentant and grieve over their rebellion and what they caused Jesus to have to suffer for them. They then ask Jesus to accept them and report that they desire to live in his will going forward. So true salvation is wrapped up in the finished work of Jesus and embracing the finished work of Jesus, which was for me. I could not save me. I could not fix me. I could not do enough good works. My good works are all polluted. I am in a desperate situation. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the way. Jesus is the only way. And I need to embrace that, and I need to say thank you, and I need to love him, and I need to submit to him, because I mess up, and I don't do well by doing it my way. I need to be obedient and following his way. So being truly saved, and we talk about that. We're about that. Which leads to number 10. Number 10 is, while CCS is a Christian philosophy and thus continually pressing towards submission and obedience to God, it realizes that not all students who attend CCS are truly saved. It might be their parents' belief that they're saved, and they may even think that they are saved. Well, I went forward to camp, or I gave some money. Well, I went to Bible school, and I raised my hand, or whatever. But CCS is aware that many false Christians exist everywhere, in our church, in this church. CCS struggles with the trouble of speaking to all students as being believers. We speak, we talk about being submissive, walking, following, realizing that some aren't truly saved. It doesn't apply to them yet until they come to embrace Jesus. So we struggle with speaking to all students as being believers when in fact some aren't. Therefore, CCS will constantly press students to self-examination and continually speak of faith alone because of God's grace and payment, which alone causes a new heart, and thus a deep love for God and a different response to the world. If we're his, we have a deep love for him, and we have a different response to the world. So we realize that just because Christian school doesn't make Christians. Christians it's back to number 9, there needs to be a personal relationship with Jesus. And so we speak in number 10 as being Christian, but we're aware that not all who attend here are Christian. Number 11, CCS will not do Christmas or Easter specials, for those celebrations belong to the church. We will not have Thanksgiving meals, as that protrudes into the family. We will put some special emphasis on the Reformation, Martin Luther and all those things that happened 500 years ago, and on Purim, in the spring or in the late winter, February, which is really marvelous, has implications for us today, and that's the story of Esther. So we will kind of highlight those two of first semester, second semester things. But when we talk about Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving, we'll note those, we'll talk about those, but we're not going to put up programs and big plays and celebrations for those, because Christmas and Easter, we believe those celebrations ought to be in the church, and Thanksgiving, we believe that primarily ought to be at the home. So we're not going to compete with those things. Okay, that gives you some ideas, some of the philosophy that drives us. And again, if you're interested in more information, or if you're interested in applying, contact me, Pastor Ken Buttermore, at gmail.com or at 402-332-3044. Thanks. Hope to talk to you soon.